remember when you first heard this sound and you heard the rage of the priests telling you they knew it was best for you? Me too. I was 11 years old when I bought this album, and it was so good it scared me. Also, I think I know who should play the main character in the movie. All that coming up. So 2112. This was my first Rush purchase. I'd heard about these guys or read about them for years in magazines, and I thought, man, they just sounded so completely different than anything else I was listening to. And of course, it brought me into the age of prophetic silken kimonos and skin-tight trousers, a lot of which Dave Grohl has some things to say about. But on the heels of Caress of Steel, which did not do as well as everybody wanted, the record company had insisted that Rush go back into the studio and craft something a little more commercially friendly. Now, manager Ray Daniels, and most Rush fans know this, assured the record company that he was sure they were going to craft something super radio friendly, under 3 minutes. Rush was having none of that. And they essentially said, look, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down in flames. We are going to write a 22-minute epic piece about standing up against tyranny, which is exactly what they did. It's one of the biggest risks any band has taken any time ever. And it worked. It essentially bought them their freedom, and it won over an enormous amount of fans, me included. So when I first heard this thing, I literally was scared. It was unlike anything I had heard. I loved it, but it scared me. It was so great. It was so over the top. I felt like I was in the movie. And so speaking of movies, I have always felt this story could be like a movie or a sci-fi miniseries of some sort. And I have an idea who ought to play the main nameless character in that tale.
I believed what I was told. I thought it was a good life. I thought I was happy. But then I found something that changed it all.
So yeah, my choice would be Chris Hemsworth. I think he could pull it off. I think it'd be really cool and believable. So obviously everyone who's heard side one of 2112 knows the story. We've started off with the overture, and if you never heard anything else but overture, you'd be completely blown away by the amount of territory three guys can cover in the space of just a few minutes. Then you're led down into the halls of the priests of the temples of Syrinx. You're screamed at for a few minutes by, I think it's Father Brown, and we start to hear the tale of a guy who finds a guitar hidden in a cave behind a waterfall. I had kind of a tough time coming up with art for the cave. But if you come up with better art, let me know. The story itself, while Neil Peart ended up crediting Ayn Rand for inspiration, I think it's fairly far removed from her work. And in the space of a 22-minute epic rock song, really takes us through the feelings of a guy who feels under the boot of a tyrannical force, which is essentially what Rush was facing with their record company, wanting something radically different from Caress of Steel, and they ended up getting 2112. The musicianship is talked about all over YouTube, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that except to say, obviously, some of the three best musicians that have ever come down the line in any genre. You've got Geddy Lee's stratospheric vocals, incredible bass playing, Neil Peart's amazing compositional drumming, all underpinning Alex Lifeson's riff-heavy, always creative guitar work that takes us through this story. So, this album gets a lot of love for side one. Side two, sometimes because the side one is so legendary, maybe gets a little less love. And that's not exactly appropriate. First of all, you've got Twilight Zone, which is a great homage to one of the band's favorite shows. You've got Passage to Bangkok, which I just absolutely fell in love with. It was so angular and strange for a rock song. At the time, I did not know that it had kind of bong suction sounds and other implied activities that were going on. I still love it to this day. And when you get to the end of this album on side 2, Geddy's vocals at the tail end of Something for Nothing are absolutely unbelievable. There's just this perfect amount of vocal fry that just sounds like no one else. How he pulled that off live, night after night, year after year, I have no idea. This album, layout-wise, Hugh Syme really started to hit his stride, and by now, I think we knew he was going to be with Rush for life. Terry Brown, also at the helm of this album. Thank God he had the vision to help these guys secure their vision and not fall prey to what the record company wanted, was essentially Rush to turn into something else. So I actually eventually got into music myself. And one thing that Rush did for me and for many of us is it subtly let us know that there are times when we have to stand up for ourselves against some form of tyranny that would steer us off the path we're meant to go. And for Rush, these guys didn't just take a risk as artists. They took a risk as entrepreneurs. Their fledgling business was clearly on the line, and they were prepared to go down with the ship. Not all of us can do that in the same way. Sometimes if you're a contractor, you have to build a house that your client wants in a certain way. But you can certainly stand up for the ethics of building a house that stands the test of time, is up to code. There are all kinds of ways in life that we can assume control. But yeah, I always felt like this story was greater than just an album. I mean, they absolutely maxed out what was possible for an LP format. And I really feel to this day like this could be a cool movie immersing us even further in the world of 2112. Now, I never completely settled on who I thought should play. Was it Father Brown, the main priest, the shrieking priest, the heavy metal priest? I had an idea before he passed away. After watching the early Flash Gordon in 1980, that Bax von Sydow could play that part. But anybody who has a better idea, I'd love to hear it. So yeah, we could absolutely go on and on about this album, and maybe I will at some point. But the bottom line is this launched me into having my favorite band over the course of 42 years. Another thing that's really amazing to think about is how much territory Rush crossed from just 1976 to, say, Power Windows in 1985. It's unreal to consider. No other band really crossed that kind of territory or even came close. And I think that's part of the allure of Rush, is that they did things absolutely their own way. 2112 was the album that bought them their freedom in the studio and allowed them to take enormous risks for the rest of their career. And for me, 2112 kind of planted a subtle seed that there would be times when I have to stand up for myself and do things my own way. So, my first LP by my favorite band absolutely blew me away and continues to this day. Rush 2112. Talk to you again soon.